All right. So last week we did such a great job of finding and organizing important information from the articles we found. Today we're going to work on the next step of our project. And we're going to transform the notes we took on our sources into paraphrases that we can actually use in our presentation. I'm going to model how I transform my notes into paraphrases that I can use in my presentation. As I'm modeling, take notes on the 4 steps I take to make my paraphrases. All right. So as you see here, I've taken notes on all my sources, and now I must go back to the notes and paraphrase. Um, so the first thing I'm going to do is to read my first note very carefully to make sure that I understand the big ideas in the quote that I copied. As I read, I'm going to underline key words and phrases that may need to be included in my paraphrase. Let's look at my first note. So, the Chicano movement emerged during the civil rights era with 3 goals: restoration of land, rights for farm workers, and education reforms. But before the 1960s, Latinos largely lacked influence in national politics. The change when that changed when the Mexican American Political Association worked to elect John F. Kennedy as president in 1960, establishing Latinos as a significant voting bloc. All right, so when I see this, I know right away that it's telling me what the Chicano movement was. So I'm asking myself, what does my audience need to know about that? I'll need to explain in my presentation. All right, so I'm going to underline some of the important parts. So I think definitely the dates are important. You need to know when this happened. So this happened in the civil rights era, which is mainly in the 1960s or before. And then I need to make sure they know what the Chicano movement was. And there's 3 main goals. So I'm going to underline that. All right, so down here, I know that I'm also going to want to include some of the big events of the Chicano movement, but I don't know if I need to go into those details just for this part, because right here, this note is just defining the Chicano movement. So I think I can hold off on some the big events for right now. All right, my next step is going to be to look away from the blurb, look away from my note, and write out my paraphrase. I'm going to try and capture the big idea of the text without copying it. So by looking away, I won't be tempted to copy the word for word. All right. So I am just not going to look at it. And you might also want to hold up a piece of paper to block it so that you're not tempted to look when you write your paraphrase. So I'm going to say Chicano movement was part of the civil rights era in the 50s and 60s. They had 3 goals. To ensure rights of farm workers, to make a better education system, and to restore land. All right, so the last thing I'm going to do is to check my paraphrase. So I'm going to go back to the original text and I'm going to ask myself these questions. Did I include all the main ideas from the passage that I wanted? So I have the civil rights era and restoration of land, farm workers, education. Farm workers, education, land, civil rights. Yep. Did I shorten the text to include only the necessary and descriptive details? Yes, I've definitely shortened this text and I left out parts I didn't need. Did I change the language enough so I'm only including the necessary words? Yeah, I needed to include civil rights era for sure, but I did change some of the other words to make it my own. Would someone who is unfamiliar with this text be able to understand what I've written? Yes, I believe so. Did I include a citation in parentheses? No. So this is the part I still need to do. So I need to make sure in the parentheses, I'm putting the last name of the author. So that's Carollo. All right. So um, we are going to have a chance to do this together, and then you will do it on your project. So in the next slide, I'm going to be asking you, what steps did you hear me take to write my paraphrases?